What's up, everyone? Welcome back to our podcast, The Blind Leading the Blind. It's your boy Kunal coming at you live from Washington, D.C., where politics is literally in the air. I mean, literally, because it is unavoidable, fucking unavoidable. And over there in the highness state of New Jersey, which isn't all that highness, okay, fine, there's some good stuff, is Emily.
Yes, we're making progress. Hello, hello. Emily over here in New Jersey. Kunal finally thinking maybe there's something good about New Jersey.
I just don't know.
Yeah, coming at you live from New Providence, New Jersey, the heart of, I
Nothing.
don't know, suburbia.
The heart of the turnpikes, folks.
Yeah.
I'm just making her feel okay by saying that it's not all that highness. There are a few good things. There really aren't.
See, you know,
We were,
we're
we were,
making progress. I was proud of you.
we were making progress, and now we are not. But it's okay.
But yeah, well, welcome to today's episode 4. We have Elden Ring. So Elden Ring storytelling, all the ways in which Elden Ring storytelling is perhaps unique, different from others, what we like about it, what we don't like about it, and yeah.
So Elden Ring is for you, dear listener out there, is actually one of our favorite games out there. We both really love this game series. I don't think Emily, you've actually played the other games yet, but I've actually played all of the Soulsborne games, including Sekiro, which hot take I don't think is a Soulsborne game. But I guess we could make this a little bit even more broadly, just generally about that form of storytelling. And if you know, you know. It's a storytelling technique that's very it's the best way to describe it, I think, is that it's very background. It's not in your face. In fact,
Hmm.
there really is no obvious story being told. Just as a FYI, we're going to be nerding out a lot on this game. So if you're expecting crime, true crime, the only true crime here is going to be who killed Millennia? Okay, so kicking it off in that direction. So I guess the first thing we kind of could talk about here is that there's no real cutscenes. There's no real characters. There are characters, that's not true. But there's no dialogue trees. There's no cutscenes. There's no, it doesn't feel like a movie, right? Like The Last of
Hmm.
Us, by contrast, or even God of War, I would say. They both feel like you're in a movie almost.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So when as Kunal said, I've only played Elden Ring and then like the Shadow of the Erd Tree.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I've only played those two, and coming into, I guess, the Elden Ring experience, I had only ever really played cutscene, dialogue tree, cinematic sequence heavy type of games. So like The Witcher, what's the one with the two brothers? Uncharted 4. Yeah,
Wait.
so like it's God of War. Yeah, so it's like all very like it's very well designed and presented to you in a very neat, clear cut, no confusion manner. So for me to go into Elden Ring, it was a very jarring experience. And I have to admit, I think Kunal can agree that when I first started playing, I was like, what the hell is this? What
Yeah.
is going on? Why
Yeah.
am I here? What is the story? Why is everything trying to kill me? This sucks.
Oh my God, yeah. I remember the first time I played, the very first game I played, and maybe I'm showing a little bit of my age. I'm not that old, I'm only 30, but the first game I played in this series was actually Demon Souls back in 2009. I was in India, which we'll do a TED talk about that some other day. But I was in India. I didn't really have a ton to do, so I had my Demon Souls like copy with me, and I was playing it, and I could not for the life of me figure out what the fuck was going on. I'm like, what? I had seen so much praise about it, and it's like I dive in, and I'm like. Okay, there's a castle. Oh, there's a dragon. Oh. So am I supposed to run this way? This is attack. Oh, what do I do with these stat lines? What? Oh, what's that guy there? So what? And I couldn't. It took me forever to even beat the first boss after like just
Hmm.
chopping away at it, figuring it out. And like I was in high school at the time. I was still a little bit new to gaming in some ways, right? And
Hmm.
I gave up on it the first time. I did not pick
Hmm.
up another Souls game until Bloodborne in 2016. Coincidentally, when also a lot of other crazy shit was going down. Um,
Hmm.
so maybe there's a there's a connection there. We shall try not to get too political.
Well, I mean, I think I started playing Elden Ring,
2020.
yeah, yeah, really recently, and I also think things have been a little bit crazy. So maybe there's a connection there. Maybe when the world seems dark and scary, we run towards the video games that are even darker and scarier.
There is actually a whole thing about that. There was a podcast I was listening to some time back about how we like to be able to play out things that are annoying and sad and dark and depressing in like a safe environment. So Elden Ring's sort of futility, or Soulsborne games in general, their futility and just keep trying and overcoming impossible odds. It's a whole thing actually. It's actually supposed to be very
Hmm.
therapeutic. But riffing on that actually, right, like about this sort of dark and oppressive environment. That is one of the most interesting aspects of storytelling in Elden Ring.
Hmm. Yeah, so the environment itself, so now that we understand that it doesn't just give it to you, you have to find pieces of the story and piece it together yourself. So that's how Elden Ring centers the character, centers the gamer. And so one of the big things again is the environment. So you'll see ruins and architecture of past events, and then you have to say, okay, what happened here? So one of my favorite ones, it's like one of the top things I put on when I was thinking about this topic was it's so small, but I remember there was like a jellyfish, and you see a jellyfish, and it's okay. So throughout Elden Ring, there's a series of places what you can't get into unless you solve a riddle or some kind of puzzle or something like that.
Mhm.
And so one of these puzzles, I think it was you had to solve it to enter an underground area. And so there was just like a little jellyfish ghost there. And you had to figure out, well, how am I supposed to get in? So as with most things, when I played Elden Ring, I kind of was like, all right, I have no idea. I have no idea what they want me to do.
Oh, this is the end of
And
season. Yeah.
it turned out that they wanted to use the jellyfish ashes so that this jellyfish ghost could then talk to her jellyfish sister and that they could go off together. And so this was a perfect example of storytelling in that once you solve the puzzle, you got like a little story about a past event. And so that's pretty much all of Elden Ring, where you'll do something, you'll see something, you interact with something, you fight something, and you get a little bit of information about a past event that led to you being there in the first
Re-
place.
Remind me, this is for, I think I know Shoma, it's the underground city, basically, right? Like
Hmm.
the whole map that's underneath the city.
Hmm. Oh
Okay.
no, this is
Dungeon.
no, I don't think it's for that. It was to go underground to a little crypt area, and then there was a special item inside. It wasn't to
Oh,
go
there's so many
down.
crypts. I'll be honest with you, it's very possible that, dear listener, that I never actually even encountered this area because I have explored a lot of Elden Ring, but I don't think I've explored this area. Also, I still need to finish out at the Air Tree, but um,
Yeah, I didn't finish it either. I didn't get to the end.
no, it's so crazy. Like with Elden Ring, this is kind of like maybe a bit more broader than just storytelling. There's so much in that game. I remember like I was playing. I'm like, oh, okay, so there's like this top level, this city on above ground, and like all this region
Hmm.
above ground. And one day I accidentally stumbled into the underground city. And I hadn't finished the game, obviously. I'm like, holy shit. There's a
Uh-huh.
whole nother fucking underground map. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
this game is enormous.
Yeah.
To talk about like the storytelling through the environment, the underground city is, I'll be honest, I haven't dug too much into the story of that yet, but like you see the very different architectural style. You see that's very clearly been ruined. You see that like the enemy types completely changed. The characters completely change. It's really interesting just how much story, even if you don't engage with it on a very deep level, I think what's interesting, right? The art
Hmm.
design, and said in previous podcasts, I'm actually an artist as well, a 3D artist. But what I love so much about Elden Ring is that, and similar games, right? Even if you don't engage deeply with the story, like Vati Vidya, and for those of you who know, you'll instantly know who Vati Vidya is. But Vati Vidya, for those of you who don't know, is a YouTuber. He's based out of Australia. His claim to fame was basically number one, he has a really great voice, let me say. Listening to him, it's very soothing.
Yeah, I actually saw some ads on Instagram that he started doing. That's just his voiceover. I think it's for like art in this realm, like
Yeah,
video game art, like a book. And I'm like,
yeah.
wait, I know that voice. Like I've seen that guy on YouTube.
It's such a soothing voice, isn't it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, wow, I could fall asleep to this voice. But no, but seriously, like, he basically started off his career by piecing together all the various things from art design to item description to enemy design and to characters, and he actually like narrates the full story. But even if you don't get on that level, the sense of atmosphere, the sense of where you're going is just beautiful. Like, there's something like we talk about like you know the various sort of parts of Elden Ring. Like Caelid very much gives you this vibe of a very rotten and destroyed like place, right? Like
hmm
that whole region, you can tell that something is rotting. And then you meet General Radon, who is lo and behold, he's actually going mad because of Scarlet Rot, I think, right?
hmm
It's fascinating, right? Like just how well that ties in. Um,
Yeah, I think that's really cool, especially in Caleb. You'll see the clean rot nights, and
yeah.
I think I forgot which like item it was, but basically you gather information to understand that they were knights under Millennia and they fought with her and they're still there. And so like I guess that's like a testament to their loyalty
No, no,
and I
it's
think mhm.
fascinating, yeah. And also, dear listener, to those of you, we're gonna be saying millennia a lot, and I know you guys are gonna get triggered with PTSD flashbacks of I am millennia, Blade of Mikola. I mean, trust me, I know
I
you're.
have never known defeat.
Oh my God, I think I don't exaggerate when I say I think it took me 100 tries to beat millennia.
Oh yeah, it. Well, see, the thing is, you actually took the route that I think you're supposed to take. I was a magician, so I did a lot of the
Range
blue
spells.
light spells. Yeah, and I shot like a million moons at her because I didn't want to
Well,
get near her.
you probably actually had an easier time beating her because I think that the spellcaster route is a little bit easier against millennia.
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas
because you don't have to get so close to her.
see, I was doing two katanas.
Oh my God,
I didn't even have a shield.
you
Um,
didn't have a. Wow,
I did.
expert dodger and
I,
roller.
I played the whole game without a shield. I used it occasionally, but like I played like 90% of the game without a shield.
I mean, me too, I guess, but that's because sometimes I was like dual wielding two different staffs.
Yeah,
Because there's the one, the glintstone, it's like
I know what you're talking
I
about.
forgot, it's like round at the top and a little bit broken,
The one you
and
get,
it's like,
Raya Lucaria. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, actually, speaking of Raya Lucaria, that's another great example of storytelling through the environment because you go in there and it's pretty obvious that they're kind of shunning the outside world. Like the whole entrance has a secret portal. There's a bunch of caved in areas right leading up to the castle. And you also go in, you understand that like this was a place where people gathered to learn spells and understand like pursuit of magical knowledge and all that. And that's a really cool thing about how they're not telling you. They're not saying, "Hey, by the way, there's no character coming up to you and saying, "Oh, this is where the Carian royal family had built this like area so that they could learn." It's like, "No, you figure it out along the way. You see some giant wolf with a huge sword. What was that? What was that one again?"
I remember. I forget the name of it, but I will say overall, like what I will say in general is really interesting is that even if you don't necessarily pick up on everything, right, you still do get a lot of. So this was an academy for magic, right? And they seem to be in opposition to these guys or in opposition to those guys, you know. And like if dear listener, for those of you who can't see, Emily's been struggling with this coffee mug or tea mug of hers. She finally
Yeah, I finally opened it. I'm so happy.
little things in life. It's truly little things in life. It's like that moment when you don't lose all your runes in Elden Ring, and you
Oh
make
my God.
you make it to the next site of grace. But it's interesting also, like Raya Lucaria's environment is what's so fascinating. is it's literally in a decrepit swamp, and all around it there's various like there's a lot of woods, there's a lot of sunken cities, and you get the sense that a cataclysm happened here. That at some
Mm,
point this was probably a really thriving town in the woods, but something went very wrong, and I mean, but that's kind of in general, I guess, all of Soulsborne's vibe is that it's all very dark and post-apocalyptic almost in
mm,
the dark fantasy sense. And Brian Lucario is actually very similar to Bergenworth, which is in Bloodborne. And I know, Emily, you haven't played Bloodborne, and you really should.
mm.
Um, and Bloodborne is a lot scarier, I will say. And Bergenworth was a similar thing where you go there and you get the sense that they were fucking with stuff they shouldn't have been fucking with. It's very much more
Mm,
Lovecraftian
mm.
sort of take where like
Actually, this reminds me of you know that one there's a sorceress Selene, I believe her name is. And you find her underground and she's one of the characters that if you're, sorcerer build, you go and you meet her and you get a bunch of spells from her. But her background, her story was really, really cool because and she's not the only one. I think there's another like outcast sorcerer or sorceress
yeah.
and you understand that they kicked her out because she was dabbling in magic that she wasn't supposed to. And, they didn't approve. And so, again, it gives you an idea. It builds the image of the Raya Lucaria Academy. So there was a certain limit, there's a certain idea of what kind of spells that their people should have been studying versus the people who didn't. Then there's the different types of magic also. So like she'll only offer you what are the blue spells again? I forgot the name for it.
I forget the name, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so there's that type of magic, but then there's the opportunity to get like gravity magic, and you'll understand based on the description of the spells or the people who give you those spells or where you find them. You'll understand how this world is just expanding and expanding. And so it's not just a matter of robust world building, it's also about understanding that
There
a
is a
whole yeah, like a whole story is here, like something existed and that's I think one of the really fun things about Elden Ring and in that you get to be the puzzle maker, if that makes sense.
yeah, and that's the thing that's so fun, and like I guess like that brings us into items almost, right? Is
Hmm.
that a lot of this is like it's almost a meta game of like piecing together the various descriptions and like the various clues, the environmental clues, the enemy types. It's really interesting where this all comes from, actually. It's a funny sort of story. The reason Miyazaki, the director for this game, and now I guess president of FromSoft, made the game the way it is in terms of its item descriptions, he really loved fantasy growing up, but he didn't really speak very good English. So he would read like, English language fantasy books, but he wouldn't catch all of it, right? So the item descriptions and whatnot are almost there evoking the same kind of feel, where it's like, there's a frenzied flame seal as an example. It's like it has a description of like what it does and like where it comes from, right? And from there you get an idea that like couple of tidbits here that its incantation originates from the outer god of chaos. Oh, so there's different
Hmm.
outer gods now. And like if you look at the lore of Elden Ring, it's actually very, very intricate once you start piecing it together from all these things. There's like outer gods, there's Marika who had like the I think it was like the Elden Ring, which gives immortality that was
Hmm.
shattered, and like all the demigods you fight are actually her children. There's a whole family tree of who married who. There's
Hmm.
also actually like apparently Marika and Radon, or not Radon,
Radagon.
Radagon. There we go.
Hmm.
It's easy to confuse these names. Oh,
Yeah,
Radagon, right? Are actually
are
this
the same person.
it's like the whole running mythos, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really it's so I just thought of this. Do you remember when we were younger and there used to be these books where it would say like make your decision. If you make a decision to do this, then go to page 50. If you make a decision to do this,
Never read those. No,
oh, okay. So
heard of them.
I yeah, so they existed and I was really into them when I was maybe in fifth or sixth grade. And I feel in some ways and I think they were also horror. They were kind of like a horror genre book. I don't know if it was like a spin-off of the Goosebumps books or something like that, but Elden Ring is kind of giving me like a video game version of that. And that like you make your decision, you go to here. Yeah, because um based on whichever quest that you choose to follow in Elden Ring, it's going to determine what the end of the game will be like, which in itself is not novel because, we have stuff like
Yeah.
that even in like The Witcher 3,
Mhm.
which is way more straightforward with the storytelling than Elden Ring. But it's kind of like, for me at least, it was a little bit scarier because I wasn't sure of which pieces of the puzzle I didn't have, and I was kind of scared to commit to a certain quest because like what if I didn't know that there was another piece that was like on the other side of the world that I hadn't yet found?
Yeah, see, dear listener, Emily actually did the right thing, which is not look up anything, unlike the dirty casual like me who actually looked up stuff to get the right ending.
No, I did no, I no, I did look up a lot of stuff actually. But
Yeah.
you have no, actually I feel like you really have to look up stuff to enjoy Elden Ring because if I wasn't allowed to use Google, if I
Oh,
wasn't allowed to look, I would have been like, what the
I would
hell?
just cry
I
at that point.
I said I don't remember who I told, but I was like, I need to like have a whole notebook and I need to make notes of everything as I'm going through this game
We
if
all
I
do.
can't look things up.
Yeah, I mean, I will say like and this isn't too related to our topic at hand, but once you play a lot of Soulsborns, you start to get the pattern of how things work. The first one you definitely need a walkthrough. Like I used a walkthrough for Bloodborne to help me out. And
Hmm
that got me the idea of how the game works. Then
hmm
after that, I started doing things a bit more. I did like a walkthrough of Dark Souls. I think I attempted Dark Souls 3. I attempted Dark Souls on my own without any walkthrough. I did fine. And Elden Ring, I did no walkthrough. It's there are patterns in these games that like you can definitely help, but you still need to look stuff up though. You
what do you mean a walkthrough? Like you just
like a YouTube guide.
sorry, I like what
YouTube.
is it?
The YouTube
Oh, you just watched. Oh, okay.
like a
Got it.
let's play guide, yeah.
Got
Um
it. Got it.
And I stopped doing that. Like now I've forgotten them, so I'm actually considering doing a fresh run of Bloodborne at some point. But it's really interesting that like with all these various items, these various sort of like pieces, and the quests and whatnot. Because what's interesting with quest design, especially and like choices and whatnot, people oftentimes forget that Elden Ring isn't actually a fighting game. It is an RPG still, and there are choices that you can make that will affect the game. What
hmm
people often don't realize is that those choices are not obvious, which is kind of
No.
I think of Elden Ring in that
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
it doesn't feel like you're doing like an active choice. You're participating in the world, but you just don't realize it, right?
Yeah,
Unlike
what was really cool to me about I think it was like the Seluvis overlap with the Ronnie quest line
yes,
was that like you don't know like who should you be trusting? There was definitely a lot of characters in the game, and like I did a brief lookup, and basically you got the sense that you don't know who's gonna try and screw you over. So whether it's that guy who was I think he was like the one that sold you crawfish or like shrimp or
I
something.
remember that guy. Yeah, over in the swamp.
Yeah. Yeah, or whether you're gonna trust Celivis or not, whether basically there was a sense of I don't know, like what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen if I go
Yeah.
along with this? Right. And like even Ronnie, like I wasn't sure, like, should I be trusting Ronnie? Like she's a witch and now she's talking to me through a doll. Like this is all kind of
Ronnie at the end of it, which is interesting.
hmm.
You get married to Ronnie if you follow that quest line through.
Yeah, I ended up that was mine. I got married to Ronnie. King
Technically,
consort.
yeah, it's a really interesting like sort of setup because like not much is given to you again, even in the quest lines and the character dialogue. It's not really vague. There is a series of books actually that does remind me of. It's called the Malazan series. I've talked about it in this podcast before. Um,
Mm,
Oftentimes you will see when people ask, "Hey, I want media like Dark Souls or Elden Ring," people will recommend the Malazan series, and the reason for that is that much like the Souls series, the Malazan series doesn't really give you explicit world building. It just throws you in and expects you to figure it out yourself. Not everyone likes this, and I'll admit I've had my struggles with this series too, but
mm.
it's a very different way of doing storytelling, of doing world building in that you have dialogue, sure, you have item descriptions, whatnot. You don't have cutscenes, which is pretty novel for a game, I think, these days. The modern trend for video gaming is that, cutscenes are how you do exposition, right? Um, and then along comes like the Soul series, and it's like, It has all that shit that other RPGs do, which is like quest design, choices, different endings, right? But it doesn't do like it doesn't stop the game, if that makes sense, right? You're still mostly you're still engaging with it without
Hmm.
actively participating. You're not giving actual active dialogue, right? Um,
I would say, so if I were to play devil's advocate, actually, because I remember when I first started playing this, I actually was mad, like I didn't enjoy it.
yeah, I'm sure.
If
That's
so, if I were to play devil's advocate, it can be extremely frustrating to feel like in order to actually enjoy the game and understand the little pieces of a story that they're trying to give you, you have to go and spend extra time outside of the game
hmm,
to understand it. And that's something that,
that turns off people, no doubt.
yeah, it really, no, I understand that though, because a lot of times, at least for me, like I'm the type of gamer where I play because I want to enjoy myself. Like I want to just relax. Even
Yeah,
if it's something that's, The Last of Us, arguably not a very relaxing vibe, but you get to escape into the world and you don't have to pull yourself out of it.
sure.
Whereas with Elden Ring, I was constantly being pulled out of it because I would pull out my phone and go, what is this? What's going on? What kind of puzzle is here? What's going to happen if I do this person's quest line?
Sure.
Like, and so that's something that I think,
It's a,
again, maybe I didn't read the Malazan series, but like um
it's a,
maybe that's
there are issues like that in the Malazan series too, but it is
yeah.
about criticism, I think. I think that like there's a lot to be learned though. Maybe wholesale copying the From Software has pulled off something truly special here, and I do think they should keep doing what they're doing. I don't think they should change necessarily. They should experiment. But there's a lot to be learned from Elden Ring, and maybe it won't work for every kind of setting, right? Like I would argue that one of the reasons Elden Ring works is because it's post-apocalyptic, and
Hmm.
it's much more natural, I think, for there to not be a ton of details about what's going on. There's another series, it's a manga series called Blam, I think is how it's pronounced. It literally is spelled blame. It's by,
Like blame with an E at the end.
yeah, I think it's pronounced Blam though in the
I see.
um, it's by Tsutomu Nihei. I'm sorry if I butchered that. Japanese is not one of the languages I speak yet, unfortunately, but one day.
I didn't
Um,
know you were working on it.
Not working on
Oh.
it. But no, like it's a very that actually predates the Soul series, much like the Malazan series. But that is very. If you actually start that comic book series, there's no world building. There's not even a ton of dialogue, but there's a lot of drawing that shows you a post-apocalyptic cyber world where these machines went out of control and just kept on building and building and building and building. And like
Mm,
the gene to control them is gone, and this dude is looking to try to find the gene to control and stop the builders. Sounds familiar, right? It sounds an awful lot like the Soul series. It sounds an awful lot like Elden Ring.
mm,
A lot of the plots for these games are similar, where it's that, something broke down, something bad happened, the world is shit. Now someone has to go and link the first flame or uh, bring their or unshatter the ring. I actually don't remember what exactly the ending is supposed to be in Elden Ring, but I think
for
it's
the first game.
yeah, in Elden Ring, yeah.
Well, I think you had like two, no, I think you had three or four major options for the ending. And the
Yeah.
idea is that basically I think you are now going to be the new ruler.
You're
So you can either be the consort to Rani. I think the other one was like the Dung Eater ending.
a great name,
And
by the way.
there's the Frenzied Flame. Yeah, Dung Eater was that
Let's
was gross.
let me tell you, I'll bet you the Dung Eater's a pantser.
For sure.
I'm
For
doing
sure.
I'm doing callbacks to our previous podcast, folks. It's like a movie.
Yeah. If you want to get the joke, you got to go and watch our previous, I
Oh,
think,
yeah.
two episodes.
I think it was episode 2,
Yeah.
but I
Episode
know
two, yeah.
Dung Eater is a pantser for sure.
For
It's
sure.
right.
Indubitably.
Do it. That's how your world builds.
Um, but yeah, so I think there were, yeah, like about four major options, and it was, well, I think in some ways it would be cool if you didn't have to look up anything because inevitably when you keep looking things up, you kind of go like, okay, like what's this going to do for me? And then you'll have a result that says, oh, this will lead to this ending. And then you're going to ask yourself, well, what are the different endings? So I think having to keep looking something up because I knew what the different endings were before I chose mine,
Yeah.
I think you kind of lose out on the element of like, ooh, like all of my choices ultimately led me to this point. But I
Well,
feel like it's really hard for someone to just, just go in and just find an ending that they didn't already know in advance because you had to have looked up so many things. So I think that kind of, in my opinion, I think it ruined it a little bit. It would have been cool to not know, but at the same time, I felt like I couldn't get through the game without knowing certain things.
it's and this is one of the things I think about Soulsborne games in general, right? They thrive on ambiguity. There's
Yeah.
actually a new game called Night Rain, which looks like high heresy to me, um, but that's
Wait,
maybe
that's not the newest Elden Ring.
there's a new game called Night
Yeah,
Rain.
it came out in May, like last month,
It's
right?
basically a Fortnite take on Elden Ring.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. So it's the idea is that you have to play multiplayer
Yeah, basically.
and it's like a really short clock and you have to
It doesn't look like my kind of thing. I
mm,
looked at it and I'm like hard pass, and I'm just not gonna pick it up. I mean, props to FromSoft for experimenting, but this idea does not look like it's a great one, and it seems the reviewers kind of agree. Um,
mm,
what I will say in general with respect to like the storytelling of Elden Ring and whether or not you like it or not, I think that another thing that I do think is really nice about the ambiguity, it leaves a lot up to the player's perception, right? Like the way
mm,
you might be impacted from the emotional impact of it will be different from mine. Like a lot of my takeaway is that this is actually pretty deeply existential work in the sense that, you know, it's a very bleak and dark world. A lot of it is about and a very sort of like common line in earlier games, like Dark Souls especially, right? Is don't you dare go hollow, which is basically a euphemism for giving up. There's something similar in Elden Ring too. I just don't think they call it hollow in Elden Ring.
hmm.
But so the idea being that like it's a very bleak ass atmosphere. You're literally one of the tiniest things, literally, right? Like there are actual giant gods in this world that can smite you and try to. But a lot of it is that you can also choose not to give up. You can choose to keep struggling and keep on, trying to fight and like, create meaning. And a lot of the goals are also player driven because it's so ambiguous. You don't really know. It's up to interpretation. Is the Age of Stardom ending a good ending?
Yeah, I kind of like the parallel you made about how it's like you have to find your own meaning. No
Exactly.
one's going to give you the meaning in this world in which kind of nothing really cares about you that much.
Exactly.
And it's tough and brutal, and greater things than you have been smashed into the earth.
Yeah.
And so you're like, who are you and what are you going to do with the life that you have here now?
Mhm.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I
I
mean,
guess emotionally, I guess it depends on like what kind of vibe you want while you're playing the
definitely
game.
not Animal Crossing.
I guess don't start playing Elden Ring if you're feeling rather depressed.
Actually, counterpoint, there are actually a lot of essays out there about people who are depressed and they play these
Elden Ring?
they actually feel better afterwards because they're getting a sense of accomplishment out of this absurdly bleak world. There are essays about this, but here's
Yeah.
I will tweak this: don't play Elden Ring or Dark Souls if you are like an Animal Crossing fan. It's not a chill vibes game. Okay,
No, not at
if
all.
you're a pantser though, you should definitely play. I want you playing.
Yes.
But it's interesting. So I think that the ambiguity and the sort of vagueness, I didn't really even engage very deeply with the story. Like I've listened to a lot of Vati videos, lore dumps, and like he sort of like narrates everything, right? But
hmm
why it works that there's no cutscene, there's no like camera fading out showing you, there's no this, there's no that. Those games, you're the star of a movie. In The Witcher,
hmm
you're the badass Geralt. In The
Right.
Last of Us, you are Joel or later Ellie or Abby, I guess, you if you
If you
keep
make it to the second
thinking that second
game
half
and you keep playing,
and you're
keep
not
playing
throwing the controller at the screen. It's really not a bad game. I don't know why people hated it so much.
the second one.
It has its structural issues, but we'll get to that some other day. Um,
Yeah.
but no, I would say it's not even like some of the Eurojank games out there. It's an actual term. Look it up. The Kingdom Come Deliverance is a great example where you're actually kind of a nobody when you play Kingdom Come Deliverance. You start off as the son of a blacksmith whose village gets like massacred by these humans and Sigismund, right? But like you're not like a master swordsman, and like as you when you play through the first few sequences, your ass is literally handed to you on a plate with a little one of those things that covers the plate and a little owlet underneath. Like your ass has been served, good sir. Um, the point of that game is to beat you into submission, and then eventually you go through the hero's journey and you get better and you become heroic. But it's still a movie, though, right?
I
Ring
think I
and Dark
think
Souls. Sorry, just like one more thought.
yeah.
Elden Ring and Dark Souls, by contrast, are you're not starring in a movie. You are literally not one of the least important things in this world. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really interesting because you talk about the ambiguity of Elden Ring. So it makes me think about what is the value of ambiguity in storytelling.
Yeah.
And so not even just in a video game format, any format, in a movie, in a book,
Well, the manga is not.
ambiguity kind of is the method through which a creator can bring the audience into the story because they have to fill in what happened. I think you can make an argument on both extremes about why that might be good or bad because if taken to an extreme ambiguity, it can be like
What
the reader might be like, okay, what is going on? Like I can't even fill in the blanks myself. And then versus having everything pre-chewed for you and then
just too much then.
right.
Yeah, I will admit that like both extremes are pretty bad. I fully agree with you, right? Like whereas, everything's like pre-chewed, there's like a guy taking you by the finger and being it's like that scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Having
Yeah.
taking his finger and having him write out the Latin phrase over and over. But no, it's like there's something pretty bad about that too, where it's like you're forcing me to follow this path and reach this conclusion that I didn't want to reach. That's not bad inherently, I think, right? I mean, to an absurd extreme, maybe, but what that means is that you're trying to tell a very specific kind of story. It's like a biography, right? A biography or even a history book, right? Typically, facts are facts. Like, there's no room for ambiguity. Like, you know,
Hmm.
like Albert Einstein discovered the theory of relativity, that the world is not flat. It's a flat earthers out there, just putting that out there. The world is not flat, it is round, right? Like, there's no room for ambiguity.
Unless we all live in the Matrix and the spoon doesn't exist.
Jesus fucking Christ, the world we live in nowadays, where you can't even say that there's no ambiguity in history because apparently there is now.
But
Um,
you know what also this reminds me of? Because speaking of ambiguity and storytelling, this reminds me of one of the tropes that's used called the unreliable narrator.
yeah, I've heard of that one. You have that in
And
Fight Club and in Memento.
hmm and I think that's really cool because I think you also have a little bit of that in Elden Ring too. I think that Elden Ring really centers the player in a way that I don't know any other because you have unreliable narrators, you
Hmm?
have ambiguity. You don't know, there's not a lot of like, this is right, this is wrong. It's you figure it out. And
I
I think
agree.
that's what makes it so fun for the fan base too, I mean, you mentioned Vati Vidya like so many times, and like that's what makes it so fun to do something like that because what would he talk about if everything was so straightforward? And
Exactly.
so everyone can come up with their own theories, and that really fuels. I think that's really an impressive thing about Elden Ring, and something that I don't know if it would translate as well into like books or
I agree.
literature.
The same thing I was thinking is that I think the only reason this works is because it's a game, right?
Yeah.
You have to having to figure out who's telling the truth. I mean, there are books like that, but eventually, like, there has to be like a conclusion at the end. And I guess like we want to look at examples of ambiguity in media. It's not quite like this, but Blade Runner is a good example where we still don't know if Deckard is a replicant or not, as an example. But Elden Ring does that, and it cranks it up to almost everything, right?
Yeah.
And arguably, I think that what's interesting is that there actually is a very grounded lore. There is a lot of lore. Like if you Vati Video literally has spent like hours talking about Elden Ring. I've listened to a good amount of it. There is a lot of facts, but there are things that are left up for interpretation as well. It's
Hmm.
like I said, like it really feeds into, and I don't know if this is what Miyazaki was going for. That's my guess, is that I think that what he was going for is that this is a world in which you really do have to create the meaning, right? Based on whatever tidbits of factoids you get, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say, like, what's interesting, I think, generally, like, with what's interesting generally with Elden Ring's storytelling beyond that is that the art design for everything does feed in pretty well still too. Like every character is fleshed out that way.
Hmm.
Every
I I think actually on the point that we were talking about how it translates much better into this form of storytelling versus just a book is that you get so much more when it comes like exactly what you're saying right now. You get so much more from having visuals there.
yeah.
So like I'm imagining, if you have like a silent film, right? Like you can still tell and convey something because people can see it and people can hear it. But you lose that in writing just a book. And I think sometimes because of that, books do kind of have to, it's not being more straightforward. Books have to give you more by virtue of just the method in which they're telling a story. So they don't have that flexibility that a video game or a movie would have. And so that's something that if you do, for me, like if you do find a book that really actually executes that ambiguity, that storytelling ambiguity, or the unreliable narrator really well, that's now doubly impressive to me because you only have words on a paper to
Mhm.
give the atmosphere, to give the meaning, to give all of that, to give the story. And I'm just now I'm thinking I'm trying to recall a single book that does that masterfully, and whether or not I've actually liked it.
There aren't a ton of books that really are able to get in that side. Even the Malazan series, I talk about it, right? But the Malazan series, you still get a lot through the process of reading it. You can go through the whole game of Elden Ring and not learn a thing, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It
you
is
definitely can.
entirely possible.
Yes.
I mean, like, and this is like one of the rare cases where I'm actually being serious. As most of you know, 99% of the time I'm not serious. Which raises questions about this podcast, I guess. But like,
Listen, you already listened to most of this video, so you can't dip now.
you're gonna question your existence pretty soon. You're gonna be wondering. It's like that moment when you found yourself on PPAP's page, YouTube page, watching Pen Pineapple Apple Pen. You wonder what decisions in my life did I take to get here?
Led me to this moment.
Right? That's what you think. No, but it's like it's interesting because like with books, right? You even the Malazan series, right, is very. It does spell out a lot for you. Elden Ring, like I mean, and I'm sure I guess that's kind of true for a lot of the games. You could go through them and not learn a single thing, but if you went through The Last of Us and you don't know what that game's about, I have a lot of questions for you. Please hit me up because I want hit me up if you actually managed to go through that game.
Comment below if you
Comment
made it through
below.
the whole Last of Us and you don't know what was
If you
happening.
don't know what was happening and you made it to the whole game, both games, please do hit me up because I'm very curious. Like I would love to see your comments down below. But
And let us know
Elden,
what you're smoking.
let us know what you're smoking, please. Like, yeah, were you on the same thing that Elon Musk was on, which was ketamine? Or were you doing something a little bit more esoteric, like maybe mushrooms? Actually, no, Elon Musk was doing mushrooms too.
Can
Yeah.
you imagine being on mushrooms while playing The Last of Us?
Interesting thought, actually,
That is hilarious.
because that game is basically about mushroom zombies.
Yeah, oh my God.
That's guys. For those of you who've played The Last of Us while on mushrooms, comment down
Oh
below.
my God, comment below.
We want to know. We want to hear from you.
What a goat, man.
I mean, imagine playing the Elden Ring on mushrooms. That must be an interesting experience too.
Yeah, can you imagine playing Elden Ring with Scarlet Rot?
Isn't that just called herpes?
I thought I was gonna go with like leprosy.
Oh, I was gonna go with herpes or like some other STD.
Oh my God, wow, so Millennia is just the goddess of herpes. Oh my God. I am not gonna be able to play this game in the same way.
I think I broke Emily, everyone.
Oh my God.
No,
Oh man.
no,
See,
like,
this is
you got
hmm
good.
No, I was gonna say this is what our listeners signed up for. But anyway, continue.
You sign up for some seriousness mixed with a lot of like 12-year-old humor.
You're welcome.
You're welcome, by the way. But yeah, like what's interesting, I think, is that like they don't spoon feed anything to you. With books, I would argue it's basically impossible to do this in a book. You could maybe get away with this in a movie, especially like a movie that has very little dialogue. I mean, Mad Max, I guess, right, doesn't have a ton of dialogue, but it's still a very linear story. Um,
Yeah.
you could get away with this in a movie because they're still visual. You could get away with this in comics even. I mean, Blam is it Blam? Is it Blame? I don't know. One or the other. Comment down below with the right pronunciation. Like, a lot of words for you, listener. But Blam, whatever it's a great series. I've read it, but like it's also very dialogue light. In fact, you can like I'm reading the last volume right now. There's almost no dialogue in this. It's all just comic panels. That's visual mediums are the only place where I think you can really get away with
Yeah.
ambiguity. But at
And
that
arguably in books, dialogue has so much more importance because if you think about writing, what are you doing? You're either telling, describing, like you're either describing a scene,
Yeah,
you're describing the characters in the scene,
yeah,
or you're saying what they're saying. Like it's dialogue. So
yeah.
if you were to take out dialogue, it would just be a giant book of
Description, basically.
description.
Written,
Yeah.
right?
And I don't find that
Compelling.
particularly compelling. I think that there's ways you could do it when like, showing but not telling. But I
Yes.
mean, even when I'm thinking about what I'm writing, there's a difference between saying something like, he had an angry looking face versus like the description of his actual face and like one of them is supposed to be more immersive than the other. But
I think somebody describing like the placement of the eyebrows without saying that the person's angry.
well, no, I mean that's what they say. Like, instead of saying, "Oh, he had like an angry look," or "He had a scowl," you could go even more show instead of telling other than scowl, unless you wanted to prioritize being succinct. And then again, that goes back towards like what's your writing style, what's the atmosphere you want to create.
I
But in terms of having no dialogue, I I feel like it would be a very interesting writing challenge to write a scene or a short story in which there is absolutely no dialogue, but you need to make it as immersive as possible.
I would also argue that even without dialogue, right, I could already think of like, I mean, this is the first thing that pops to mind. I think we're talking too much about this topic, but like a story about a drug deal. You could I know, I knew you were gonna laugh the minute you
I
said that.
was wondering what you were going to say when we were talking too much on this topic. I'm like, what is it? Drug deal. Okay, continue.
I mean, we've been talking about drugs too much on this podcast. For the record, all dear, uh, dear listeners, we do not endorse drugs on this, other than the person who played The Last of Us.
We also do not judge, so you do you. But also, we don't endorse drugs. So,
Also, please do tell us if you played The Last of Us on mushrooms or Elden Ring on mushrooms.
oh my God, I would never want to play Elden Ring on mushrooms. Can you imagine?
I don't want to.
No, 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 thank you.
That'd be horrifying. But no, I'm talking about like getting back to our topic. Like, imagine a short story that's about a drug deal, right? You can probably get away with no dialogue, I think, in that kind of a short story situation because realistically, like, what do you really need to describe? You need like, let's say, they're meeting at some back alley. I mean, that's
Yeah, yeah.
the
Well,
most
because it,
tropiest of tropey. The most tropiest of tropey back alley drug deals. Guy walks in. I can already describe to you. Man walks in with a trench coat. He looked around. You know,
is it a man or is it two raccoons?
exactly. We shall not know. And then he kept on walking, looking for his quarry. He found his mark. He dropped the package. He left. Another man came sometime later. You can do it, right? Like you could potentially do a whole short story around this.
What if you had to write a short story about a scene in which you typically would have to have dialogue? Like, what if it was a proposal, marriage proposal? Or what if it was like an argument with no words?
An argument with no words. That the man gesticulated wildly, jumping up.
I'm imagining like passive aggressive post-it notes.
It-
Actually, I could write a whole story about this. I don't want to say names or whatever, but in the past, I have had roommates who fought, and there was a whole fight that went down, but they never talked to each other face to face.
I mean, well, post-it notes basically, I mean, like tying into Elden Ring, that's literally what the item descriptions are. They are literally post-it notes if you think about
Yeah, actually. Wait, you know that'd be so cool. It would be so cool in Elden Ring. See, okay, Miyazaki needs to hit us up for some ideas. What
it.
if you had like two characters in the past arguing with each other and you could just go through their old notes back and forth about how they were arguing?
Man, that'd be
And then
amazing.
you could see the fight that they eventually had and like the giant ruins of the house in which they lived.
I think you talk about Millennia and Radon in that case.
Did we see notes between them?
There are like pieces that you get from item descriptions, from dialogue. There are pieces that you get that like Millennia fails to kill Radon, but like there's a whole thing about General Radon. But it's interesting because like literally that's kind of what they're doing with the item descriptions. They are post-it notes basically. The
Yeah.
difference I think, right, with if you try to do that in a story. Man, it just would be very surreal, right? You would not have a story the way it would be Elden Ring, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Write it out. Even a film, I would argue, would be a little surreal, but not necessarily, I
They
guess.
are trying to make an Elden Ring movie. So
There is
I'm actually really curious to see how A24 is going to handle this.
Alex Garland. Alex Garland is making a movie. I mean, he's a good director. If there's anyone I think who could do it, it's probably him. Um,
Hmm.
I suspect though it's going to be more straightforward than people imagine. Or maybe,
Yeah.
I guess A24 is very off. Didn't they do The Green Knight? I think they did that one, right?
I don't remember.
We'll look this up
The
real quick.
Green Knight. Let's see.
Green Knight. It is by, let's look.
Yep,
Oh,
A24.
it is A24. I was right. So
Yep.
The Green Knight arguably is if you haven't seen it, it's basically based off Arthurian myth. Stars Dave Patel. It is arguably the most Souls-like film I have ever seen. Um,
Oh.
in that it's also very like out there and like very not there is dialogue but like it doesn't quite describe for you what's going on. It's worth a watch if I mean I should get that on my collection anyways, but with film it's easier, right? With film it's much easier. I would argue the other thing that makes Elden Ring work with its storytelling format though, it's post-apocalyptic, right?
Hmm.
There it makes sense that everything is so disjointed if it's the vibe, right? Imagine
Yeah.
telling something this disjointed, but like about New York in modern day, New York City in modern day with all the people and whatnot. You would come
Yeah, it
off
would be impossible because someone would be talking.
well, the story will come off from the perspective of a crackpot, basically. I mean, which I mean,
So basically, it has to be a post-apocalyptic world, or we need to go into a
or it's a
drug-addled.
post-apocalyptic human whose mind is shattered. A crackpot, in other words, you know.
Okay, okay.
But like, no, I'm serious though, right? Like, it would come off as so surreal and so strange, right? Imagine that, like, you're walking. Imagine just like, a story set in New York, which is told the same way through like bits and pieces and post-it notes. It would come off like the perspective of some nutcase, basically, right? I mean, I should stop making
Yeah.
fun of it, but it would be somebody severely mentally challenged. Let me put it this way. Like it would
Don't
be
come at us,
come
please.
at us, please. But like, but jokes aside, like, that actually is kind of maybe what you would be aiming for, right? Is
You
that
know what? Yeah, maybe this is why sometimes games like this are so appealing because, I mean, listen, you go into Elden Ring and half the people in the world are dead. Like half the people are gone, everything is destroyed.
like 90%?
Yeah, like 90%, like everything's just gone.
The remaining
And
10%.
maybe that's kind of nice because if in your daily life you have nothing but people talking to you and you have to do this and you have to do that and you're like all these things going on, maybe it's kind of nice to escape to a world
For
in
sure.
which
That's
that doesn't exist. It's literally just you. Granted, it might be
Right.
decaying and decrepit, but it's like you get this sense that it's all over. Like all that hustle and bustle and all that stress from that is gone. And this makes me think of how like, sometimes when people I've seen, you see online, you see people commenting about how like, oh, at least if there was an apocalypse, I wouldn't have to pay my bills tomorrow. I wouldn't have to show up to work tomorrow. And it's like, yeah, you know what? Sometimes the crushing oppression of reality and having to live our lives and go to work every day is sometimes sounds worse than let's go to a shattered world in which there are these terrible things. But you know what? At least I don't have to, have my one-on-one with my boss. Like,
Well, I will say one thing, two thoughts on that, right? Number one, that is a very dark thought, and in some senses, I think it might even explain our current political predicament. But I did promise no politics, but so I will stick with that for the most part.
for the most part.
The second thought, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, right, a lot of people who are depressed or whatnot have reported that they've played this game and they actually start to feel better a little bit afterwards. Which a lot of that is that it's a safe space, right? You're not actually literally dying over and over, right?
Mhm.
And like it's a safe space in a very bleak and oppressive world to act out like this whole thing and kind of sometimes healing can be like repeating a cycle over and over until like you master it. I mean, for those of you who think of repeating a cycle over and over, Millennia Blade of Mikola, right? I mean,
Mhm.
if you if you like me played with two katanas and did not have a shield, right? Like you learn that there is a particular sequence with which you can hit her, and then the third one, I still remember this, which should tell you how traumatized that it is. I have been.
Okay.
It was 1, 2, 3, dodge. 1, 2, 3. This was like the whole thing. But no, like I mean, I joke a little bit, right? I mean, and psychiatrists, please don't contact me. I'm not crazy, I promise. But
Well,
like,
that's what you would say if you were crazy.
well, maybe. But okay, psychiatrist, I'm completely crazy. I'm a
Mm.
crackpot. Come at me, bro.
That's why I can't stop talking about drugs.
Um, this podcast, folks, crazy drugs, drug deals, mushrooms.
Mushrooms. Yeah.
um,
Existentialism.
existentialism as well. Mushrooms and existentialism pair well. It's like a
Yeah.
particularly good wine with with your meal.
I'm loving the metaphor.
But no, but like, back to my original sort of point, like, which is that like there really is a thing, right? Where if you repeat cycles over and over, and like you eventually find the pattern, and you're able to heal that.
Mhm.
And I suspect that that is a big part of what makes Elden Ring popular. In general, that and I think that gaming has been very saturated with a very particular type of game, and this was just something very different. Um,
Yeah.
that said, like I think what's interesting also is that like I actually have to admit, as we've talked, I don't think you could do this outside of a game. I don't. I think a movie might come close. I
Yeah,
think the book would struggle.
I definitely don't. Even a movie in its like a movie is limited to how maybe what, 2.5 hours max.
Yeah,
The
this is
amount of
100 plus hours,
right, exactly. To replicate that in a movie is just not possible. So I do feel like
100 hours of film.
I yeah, like I feel like in some ways the well, I don't know what the proper word for it is, but like the not obtuseness, the mysteriousness, the hard to graspness of
Yeah,
Elden Ring is only allowable because you can invest as many hours as you want into it.
and
But when you have time constraints or word constraints, then I feel like I don't see how you would be able to do exactly that
no.
without ruining the experience.
Well, I mean, a picture is worth 1,000 words is the old adage, right? And in this,
Right,
you have not just a picture, but interactivity, right? Um,
right.
it's a changing picture. So,
Yeah. It's
but
interesting. Sorry, just
I don't think,
something you just said. It reminds me of there's a lady I follow on Instagram. I'll have to include her in the description below. And she talks all about like history and stuff, but a lot of times she really likes looking at old paintings. And so she'll dissect a whole old painting and tell the story in the painting.
yeah,
And so I feel like,
it's the same idea basically.
yeah, exactly.
And like what that makes me think of also, like we talk about like how its engagement is as much as you want it, tying back to the original point of the sort of existential aspect of it that I see at least, right? Is
Hmm.
that this also ties into role playing. It's really how you want to engage with it. if you don't give a flying fuck and you don't find any meaning in like knowing why Millennia got contracted scarlet rot from whatever reason, um, you don't have to, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
you really don't have to. Like you can literally just go beat her and be like, I beat this hard boss and never interact with it further. And as a
Hmm.
role-playing character, that kind of works too, right? Like if you think about it, a warrior doesn't give a flying fuck usually. They just need to know who the bad guy is. In role-playing perspective, it works. Now imagine you're a mage historian, right? I feel like then, like, maybe a mage historian character is gonna try to spend a lot of time looking at every item, finding every item out there, like almost like an archaeologist kind of thing, right?
Hmm.
Trying to piece it all together and be like, oh, interesting. So that's what this is all about, right? Like,
Can you?
the thing about Gandalf, right? Gandalf is our sort of thing. Gandalf would do that, right? Gandalf as a character, I feel like, would be very invested in
Hmm.
knowing the knowledge. I mean, even in the movie.
Hmm.
If you remember, like you see that whole scene where he goes to the library in Minas Tirith, he's reading up on the ring. That feels
Hmm.
very in line, right? And so
Yeah.
the role playing opportunity in the meta sense.
Can you imagine if every time, and I don't mean just in video games, but like in life, can you imagine if every time you had to fight someone, you had to know their whole backstory? Can you imagine what that would do for world peace?
Probably not a ton.
You think so?
I'm not very
Like
optimistic.
imagine every time oh, okay. So more pessimistic. I feel like it would do a lot for world peace because you would be forced to have to hear someone else's story
The Last of Us Part.
and then still choose violence.
The Last of Us Part Two, right? Like, I mean, I think I might have sent you this video essay, but Hello Future Me. I keep talking about him in this podcast. I actually am a patron, so I am a little biased maybe, but he did a whole critique on The Last of Us Part Two, and this isn't about the Part Two, but what was interesting was what he mentioned was that a lot of people still struggle to empathize with Abby, even though they knew her backstory, and that's precisely the point of that game, which is that how tough it is.
But I think it's because we had a whole, sorry to diverge, dear listeners, from Elden Ring for just 1 second. To The Last of Us we go.
Yeah,
For The Last of Us, the whole first game, we were heavily invested in Joel and Ellie. We played a whole game just with them.
yeah, and then
Now imagine it wasn't them, it was Abby and her father.
right. I mean, but that's kind of the point of the game. But anyways, we will.
But what I'm saying is I feel like we were given who were we given first? We were given Joel and Ellie first.
That's kind of the point, I think, right? Like the point is that like because you've been with these people longer, right? Even though arguably you know Abby's full backstory, right? But we can discuss this maybe in a separate podcast, I think, which would
Yeah.
it's definitely an interesting topic. With Elden Ring, right, like you kind of don't have that choice, right? But I guess because Elden Ring is much more bleak, much more oppressive. Elden Ring is much more about how insignificant you are. I still think that that really is the sort of thesis of that game, right?
Yeah, you mean nothing, but you can still make something of yourself.
Kind of, right? It's not the American dream. Um,
What?
I mean nothing, but if you work hard enough,
Wait, so if you work hard enough and you pull yourself up by your bootstraps,
you can
dear
become.
Tarnished, you too.
It's not the American dream, right? There's
Okay.
there's a critique of capitalism in there, or maybe it's standing for capitalism. I'm not sure which.
I mean, the only little tidbit of capitalism I see in there, well, isn't that kind of like post-capitalism?
It's post everything, technically.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they tried capitalism, they failed. They tried communism, they failed. They tried kings, they failed. Did
Well,
you
so
ever-
like, so America was, well, she was queen, so they had a monarchy, I guess.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm joking. They had a monarchy. They did not try communism. There was no people. There was no revolution of the workers, the proletariat. But no, like it's really interesting because like I think that it really does. I do think coming back to the post-it note thing, it really is as if you're getting a story through post-it notes. It really does feel like that's what we are doing in Elden Ring.
Hmm.
I have to admit, I would be very curious to see someone attempt it in a book form. I guess you could just make a book of post-it notes.
You could, yeah, you could. I mean, there are stories that are told that are just through like journal. Well, I guess journal is not really. That's not a good one.
But you
I
could
was
do
gonna.
a story of post-it notes, which is essentially what this is, right? Like, I mean, if you think about it. not impossible, but like I mean, imagine like a book. Here's what I'm imagining.
Um,
If you wanted like an Elden Ring book, I would imagine that it would be part just quotes from people, part descriptions of different things, part descriptions of environments, and then part descriptions of like weapons. That's
yeah,
how
but if you were to put them in the book in the order in which you would actually read those things as a player, that would be confusing as hell.
it would probably not be a fun reading experience, but that's how
It would, yeah.
I
And
think
so that's what the visual aspects makes up for.
that's the
Because
video.
I would be so confused.
You would need a
I
notebook
mean,
with you at that point, right? You would have to like basically, it would basically be your project then. And again, right, I suspect that is probably one person out there at least who would be into that. Right? I'm totally serious. Like I bet you there would be people who are kind of into it because it's kind of a game then at that point, right? Outside of that,
mm,
I don't see this being done in book form.
no, I feel like if it was going to be in a book form, it would have to at least be a graphic novel. At least a graphic novel with
You
a
can have
lot of,
visuals. Yeah.
yeah, because I don't know. If you disagree with me, comment below. But
Yeah,
I just
you
don't
know,
see
like
how that would
I mean,
work.
other than like the guy who was jumped up on mushrooms playing The Last of Us, we do definitely want to hear about this one too, which is that
Yes.
we think this could actually work as a book, like a book of literally post-it notes. Well, maybe
Yeah.
not.
And if you have any recommendations or if there's any books that we're not considering, we haven't mentioned that you think has done this really well, please like drop a note down below.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Which is it definitely would be curious to see, right? So I guess in closing, I, I guess we are kind of at time for this particular podcast. So in closing, I definitely think that From Software has achieved something truly spectacular, not just from a gameplay perspective, but also just from a storytelling perspective through a new medium, right? It really,
Hmm.
I think, does show you. I mean, we literally spent the last 20 minutes trying to think of how this could be done in book. Admittedly, we kind of joked around a little, which we always do. But we spent the last 20 minutes like trying to figure out how this could be done in book form. And the
Hmm.
best we could come up with was a book of posted descriptions. And admittedly, yeah, that probably would not really be considered a book at that point, I would argue. That's not even a novel then, right? That's
Hmm.
just something else. It is very fascinating and very exemplary of video games as a medium. Number one, how much they've matured, and number two, how much they can offer on their own, what they've achieved here. And
Yeah, and I think this discussion can also be boiled down to the point that we really enjoy seeing different ways to tell a story, as opposed to just the traditional ones that we've always seen. So whether it is in a book form or in a video game form, it's like really refreshing to see someone break the norm and to involve the reader or the player in a way that we haven't been able to do before and
yeah,
not lose out on the robustness of the world building, not lose out on all the other key things that are like essential to a good story. You know, you have the big key players, you have conflict, you have some resolution, but really at the end of the day, in the case of Elden Ring, it's kind of all up to you. And so that's really fun. It's really new. It's, in some ways maybe even controversial depending on different perspectives. But one thing's for certain is that it definitely gets a conversation going and it's very engaging.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I really have to admit that like it is definitely a big shift even from games prior to Elden Ring, or to I should say Demon Souls actually prior to Demon Souls. And
Mhm.
Elden Ring's really the latest in a long line of games. Prior to Demon Souls, it's a big shift that such games didn't really exist. They did, but they weren't this popular, I think. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of want to go back into playing Elden Ring now.
Yeah, me too. Like after this, go down and turn on PS5.
All right,
But
folks.
yeah, thanks for tuning in. If you have any thoughts on this, feel free to drop a comment below. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and we hope you really enjoyed this episode of The Blind Leading the Blind.
And please, if you have played The Last of Us on Mushrooms, definitely comment down below. It's important.
That's mandatory.
All right,
All
guys.
right.
Take it easy,
See you
everyone.
guys.
Don't pants too hard.
Peace out.